Welcome to Is It Better with Onboarding? Improving first-time cryptocurrency app experiences. My name is Froehlich and I'm the corresponding author to this paper, and I'm happy to be here at this 2021. If you want to read along, feel free to scan the QR code and download the paper. Before I launch into my talk, really sure what can you expect from this paper, and also why should you spend the next 8 minutes listening to me. What we try to do in this publication is to understand how users make sense when they engage with new mobile apps. To this end, we conducted first a user study with an interview study with 16 participants across different age groups to get to the bottom of this. We also built heavily on Stram et al.'s framework from this 2018 and minimalist instruction theory to then develop onboarding processes for 2 cryptocurrency apps. We chose those because from previous research we found that users generally had problems starting into cryptocurrency apps, so we thought they would be well suited for our user study. We did it for 2 apps, one simpler one and one more feature-rich, to understand how these conditions would change the effect of onboarding. To this end, we also conducted a user study with another 16 different participants. And third, we also present the first scientific study who applied the onboarding design method that Stram et al. Proposed. And to make it short here, we found that it worked quite well. With this, let me launch into the actual talk and more question to a virtual audience here. But who of you really reads onboarding processes, right? So I think we've all been there with our phones, just swiping through them, trying to get to the actual app. And it's not really surprising that the HCI or research community is split on whether onboarding does actually work. However, what we know is that the initial interaction with mobile apps is crucial for adoption, and also that practitioners regularly rely on onboarding in mobile apps. So with this, we set out to have a look at this question, specifically through an interview study where we explored the general app exploration behavior of new users, and then in a user study where we evaluated the effect of onboarding with 2 high-fidelity prototypes. Now, in the interview study, we had those 16 participants. We generally asked ourselves how do users make sense of new apps, and followed through semi-structured interviews there, which we analyzed later on. So we coded them and clustered them with affinity mapping. Second, we conducted the user study based on our findings. So we created prototypes based on 2 real cryptocurrency apps, conducted the first round without any onboarding, then developed the onboarding based on the design insights we generated, and conducted a second round with the onboarding and compared our results and evaluated it. How did these user studies look like? We built heavily on the onboarding framework developed or proposed by Stram et al. At this 2018 and added a small modification, namely the system usability scale at the very end. So how this method worked is we had an entry interview with the participants where we tried to understand the mental model they had before engaging with the app for the first time, then had the prototype interaction, which was a guided interaction where participants were asked what they wanted to do next and what they expect to happen if they performed this action. Then they performed it, and then we followed up and asked them how this now differed from what they expected. All of this was recorded on a card, in this case virtually on Miro, and so we stepped through the app until the user finished what they actually set out to do. After that, there was a short exit interview. All of the interview was recorded, so we could later use it in our analysis, and after the exit interview, participants would fill out the system usability scale. Finally, for designing the onboarding based on the data we collected in the first round of the interview, we used the minimalist instruction principles as well as the aha moment concept and the quick win concept that Stram et al. Proposed in their paper. Now, which apps did we use to build our prototypes on? So we chose cryptocurrency apps. This is the main because we knew from previous work that they were hard to get started with for new users. We tried to select one app that is rather simple in the features it offered, rather straightforward if you want to, and another one that is very feature rich and offered a lot of different features. So on the left hand, you can see the starting screen of 10x, the simple one, and on the right hand, the starting screen of Clever, which offered a lot more cryptocurrencies, functionality, and so forth. Now, let's cut to the chase. Do onboarding processes work? Well, it depends, as so often. Here you can see the system usability scores between both apps, between the normal session without any onboarding and the one where we have added our onboarding. The SUS scores are probably not quite comparable to SUS scores of real apps since we had this stepped interaction, but they allowed us to some extent quantify the effect that the onboarding had on users. This is in line with the qualitative evaluation that we did as well. So for 10x, the simple app, with mixed results. So the SUS score slightly decreases, but also the duration that was needed for the app exploration. For Clever, on the other hand, the feature-rich app, we can clearly see the SUS score improves. So that's positive, and also the time that was needed to explore the app decreases. So users were participants in user study were faced with less detours. They knew faster how they could achieve what they wanted to achieve. Now, what can we learn from this? I think first off, Stram et al.'s onboarding framework works, so that's a positive one, also for all of practitioners, but also researchers who want to build onboardings. The minimalist instruction principles are well suited to design them, also cover very much what we found out in our first interview study, what users want or don't want from onboardings. We think extending the framework by Stram et al. With the system usability scale makes sense to get a rough measure how the perceived usability overall changes, in addition to the qualitative insights that are generated. Now, the second, onboarding process are no silver bullet for mobile app developers. As so often in research, there is no silver bullet, right? So what we learned from this study is clear that feature-rich apps can profit from onboarding. For simple apps, the value remains unclear, but also, as so often, it's possible to test this, and this is what we really would encourage app developers who are unsure. I think using design method, it's very cheap. You can get a few users in really quick and then figure that out. Lastly, and this is also in line with the minimalist instruction theory, nobody wants a manual. Users want to immediately explore new apps, right? And to this end, onboarding should be action-oriented and support users in achieving what they want to achieve instead of getting into the way. And lastly, going back to the beginning of the talk, message apps probably don't need onboarding. If your app is straightforward and users are used to this type of app, just skip it. What can we learn for future work from here? I think several points. This is a qualitative study with one app and a few participants, and I think there's more research needed to evaluate the definite impact of onboarding in different contexts and under different conditions. Moving beyond cryptocurrencies, high fidelity prototypes, and actually going on to a quantitative evaluation, sure is something for future research. What is also an interesting question is whether this onboarding effect that we saw based on the SUS score is permanent, or whether it diminishes after second use, third use, or maybe holds on even longer. And to this end, also going beyond first use onboarding could be interesting. Now, if we look at Clever as a really feature-rich app, an onboarding should be short, right? You cannot onboard a user to the entire app within just one session. So here the question is, how can we also design effective onboarding that moves beyond this first-time use, but gradually introduces more and more features to the user and onboards them without getting into the way. And with this, I'm already at the end of my talk. Thank you for listening. If you want the paper, get it here. And if you want to reach out to talk more about onboarding processes, cryptocurrencies, or other topics, yeah, feel free to reach out to me via Froehlich@cdtm.de. I would be happy to hear from you.